this morning to do two things. One, to address a very curious development that came from the Office of the Commissioner of Police, and the other, to respond to any questions that you may have with respect to the violation of the current matters which have been attracting your attention recently. Let me begin by treating the matters arising out of the comment of the Commissioner of Police, which generated the headline of Monday, July 8th. As you all are very much aware, I took to the Parliament on May 20th a few pages on which certain conversations, communications appeared to have taken place between members of the government and other government public officials. And I indicated to the Parliament that I received these pages on which some person had sought to communicate that these conversations had taken place, and the conversations pointed to certain developments which were to happen or which could happen. The one thing I did when I made those issues public was to call for an independent investigation. That was the outcome of the debate. Here it is, these transcriptions of these communications are before us from a source unknown to me, but about people known to me and about actions known to us. And a lot of what was in those conversations appeared to provide answers which have not been provided by the said persons in government since last year. Bear in mind that this is supposed to have taken place September of 2012. We are now bringing it into the public domain in mid-2013. And I raise this against the background that what was required to be done and what still is required to be done is to determine the authenticity of the substance as presented. There are those who focus only on the authenticity of the email, for which that could be, it could be errors in the transcription, it could be a person hiding behind whatever, but the content and the corroborative aspect of the content would always be of interest to us. The emails, most of them, the email addresses were confirmed to be addresses of members of the government. Most of them, there are one or two of them which didn't seem to be that way, but by and large, the vast majority of the email addresses in the correspondence are government official addresses. And then it appeared to us that the obvious thing was to determine whether in fact those communications took place, and that those investigations would tell us that in very quick time. At that time, we indicated that the powers of the Integrity Commission and that commission's responsibility for the conduct of persons in public life seemed to have been the best approach and the quickest approach to have done this, and to do it in an undisputed way. Because it would have been done, or it could have been done, without any government influence or by persons beholden to the government who could have somehow, either directly or be seen to be indirectly influencing the outcome and the result of this exposure. Well, of course, you know, the conversations have gone on, a lot of it very acrimonious in the last 6 weeks. It's now almost 2 months that this has gone on. The government sent, the Prime Minister sent the document to the police And the government resolutely at that time determined that the police is the place for it to go, and the police are the people to handle it, and they had every confidence in the police. That was when the government thought that the police would have done a slow job to allow the Prime Minister and her colleagues to very quickly take the position that the emails are fake, which is the position the government took from the very beginning. You may recall, as I sat down in the Parliament, government spokespersons got up, and every single one of them at that time took the position that this is a nonsense which ought to be thrown in the dustbin. So as far as the emails being fake, nothing has changed since the exposure of this issue. What the country wanted was the outcome of an investigation to determine on the basis of work and evidence which could be understood and appreciated and accepted by the population that these things are fake or they're not fake. Lo and behold, as soon as it appears to the government that the investigation was in fact a proper investigation and that it could be done on the basis of persons being interviewed with respect to the corroborative aspect of some of the contents of the script, the government took a very different position and started assailing the police with all kinds of accusations about the police incompetence. And in fact, no less a person than the Attorney General has said to us in this country that nobody but a foreign investigator would be allowed to look at his handsets. Well, we were never impressed with the search of handsets. That may be part of the police's direction to get to it. What we were concerned about is the dragging on of the investigation, because you understand, CNC tweeted a report on its own last week where foreign experts were saying to us, the longer it takes to look at the servers, the more difficult it is to determine the outcome of that investigation in a way that will say categorically that these conversations took place or didn't take place. It is our view that that is music to the government's ears, because any government having at its disposal the wherewithal that this government has could have immediately taken the requisite steps to have gone in May, and within a matter of a short time, with the government's initiative, we could have been better off than we are now. And as it progressed further into time, it is the government's view that the longer it goes on, the more difficult it will be for the people of Trinidad and Tobago to get a definitive, believable answer on this matter. Lo and behold, every time you ask about how this is going, the identified investigating officer, DCP Richardson, quite properly will answer, saying that the investigation is progressing, he's interviewing people, he is happy with the progress, and so on and so on, in the face of changed government's positions along the way. He even had to report quite disturbingly about the government sideshows, where the government was picking up experts on all kinds of pavements and handing them to the police, saying that this expert say this and this expert say that, attempting to color and to influence the police's work. That was the scenario as of till last Friday, when, of course, the Commissioner of Police's term has been extended by 6 months. And I'm here making no connection. I'm simply stating a fact. Last Friday, the Commissioner of Police, we told that he had got a 6 month extension on his service as Commissioner of Police, and he has left the country on the weekend, I presume. I saw he's gone to UK, and he'll be there until the 22nd of July. But in that weekend arrangement where he's leaving the country, and as far as we were aware, the investigation was progressing to the satisfaction of investigating officer DCP Richardson. Up comes a headline in the Express, an exclusive headline to one limb of the media, where the Commissioner of Police, who ultimately is responsible for the investigation, doesn't matter which officer is doing it, especially a matter like this where the government's life is at risk and the population is keenly awaiting the outcome of an investigation that could determine whether we can take the police seriously. The Commissioner of Police makes a statement to the Express, which caused the Express to publish a headline definitively, unambiguously, emails are fake. This is emails fake. And this is based on a statement made by the Commissioner of Police. And that position taken by the Commissioner of Police, in talking to the Express, he said, based on what is before me. Well, I presume, having been told that there was an investigation taking place, a Deputy Commissioner of Police is investigating with all the police resources, and it's been almost a month and a half. There is something before the Commissioner of Police that is different to what came to them on the 24th or 23rd of May. Because that headline is driven by the statement based on what is before me. However, the Commissioner of Police never indicated what that is before him, that caused him now to very definitively determine that the emails are fake. Well, this is a huge development because the Commissioner of Police, whom the government depended on, defended, directed to investigate this matter, it has now been determined by the Commissioner of Police based on what is before him. But that came a few days after the investigating officer gave us the impression that the investigation had been having roadblocks, to use his word, it was hamstrung, and in fact it was being obstructed in some way by a lack of cooperation, and in fact he was pursuing it with vigor, it was ongoing. So something would have happened between the last statement of DCP Richardson and this statement of the Commissioner of Police. Now, I have a problem with the Commissioner of Police's statement which drove the Express headline, and it is this. It is a collapse of the country's institutions. This country will not pay attention to the fact that the vast majority of our institutional framework meant to provide us with good governance either has collapsed or is collapsing. Because it boggles the mind to think that in this scenario of these emails, where the government's conduct is being threatened, the government's existence is being threatened, the government's conduct is being called into question against the debacle of Section 34 of last year. And this investigation could come to a point where the commissioner could determine that the emails are fake. And how does he handle that? He gives an exclusive scoop to a newspaper. I would have expected that if the commissioner has come to that point, he would have called the media, through which the population would have been informed, and tell the country what the police has found based on their investigation. And you would have been able to interrogate him as to how this finding was arrived at. No, we don't get that. We get an exclusive scoop to a newspaper by a commissioner who has left the country. And that is music to the ears of all the government persons, particularly those who have questions to answer. And of course, government supporters are jubilant because this matter, which represents an indication of the kinds of things that the government has been doing and could do, apparently is now over. And today's papers, a lot of front-page stories. Well, of course, there's not a front-page story that I am now the villain of the piece. And of course, today, the Prime Minister's lawyer, who speaks for the Prime Minister in this matter, is calling for the investigation to end. And to end on this note. To end on a note where we're not sure how the Commissioner of Police came to that conclusion. We're not sure whether in fact the government has been able to access any information from the interested parties that could point to that conclusion. What we seem to be sure about is that the government has not been able to say to us, and I think the Commissioner himself, like the government's experts that came earlier, they all have not been able to say to us that we have been to the servers And the information from the servers indicate that no such communication or similar ones took place by these officers. And while that is so, the Prime Minister's lawyer, who spoke for her throughout, and we assume is speaking for her, is now calling for the investigation to end. So this country, which lived through Section 34, where the government created a bill, went to Parliament, passed it into law, betrayed the trust of the independents in the Senate, betrayed the trust of the opposition in the lower house, disregarded its commitments to the Parliament, went in the dead of night, proclaimed Section 34, and all that's in the email point to a protection of that position where the government doesn't want to answer questions about that behavior. Took a position to demonize me for exposing the conversations in those emails, call on the police as the only investigators able to do this, demonize the Integrity Commission and its chairman, mislead the population on the powers available to the Integrity Commission. They are now saying to us, in this nebulous, dubious way, that the Commissioner of Police has determined that the emails are fake, and therefore the investigation must end. So in other words, they cut away without explaining what drove the surreptitious proclamation of Section 34 last year. And they're expecting now to get away with an investigation that raises more questions than answers. And right there is the Commissioner of Police making a statement like this in this situation, driving the media to report him in this way. And of course the Prime Minister is down there in the by-election waving her vindication as contained in a front page story which has more questions than answers. Questions to the Commissioner of Police. So today, I want to put two questions. One to the Commissioner of Police and one to the Prime Minister. And the question I want to put to the Commissioner of Police is, I assume that he read the emails, which he has deemed up to be emails. In there, he would have seen a number of contacts or conversations, purported conversations, about somebody being interested in what happens in the office and wanting to monitor the actions of the DPP. I want to ask the Commissioner of Police today, now that, according to the Prime Minister and the headline, that the investigation is concluded on that score, whether in fact the story in The Guardian, which indicated that listening devices and or other similar electronic monitoring devices were found in the office of the DPP last year in November, whether as Commissioner of Police he conducted any investigation into this allegation as published by The Guardian, and whether he is in a position today to tell the country in a similar definitive matter that last year, November, or any similar time, that no listening device or monitoring device was found in the office of the DPP. Because what we have heard from the DPP in this matter is no comment. We, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, are not prepared to accept that as an answer. We want from the Commissioner of Police, using the same powers that he guards so zealously, to tell us that he used those powers, he investigated, and he is now in a position to tell us definitively, unambiguously, that no such situation existed at the office of the DPP last year. And he must also tell us that with respect to this matter, that no officer of the special branch or the special branch itself had no involvement in this matter and is in no position to provide any information other than what he has provided to us, that this is also fake. And secondly, I want to say to him, the reason why I'm raising this is because in those emails were of September of last year. The conversations indicated an intention to monitor the DPP office. And therefore, the story in The Guardian is of great relevance to us.
we must determine whether in fact that monitoring did take place or whether there was any attempt to monitor as contained in those conversations in that document I put in the Parliament. And therefore, that is a matter which I want to hear from the Commissioner of Police on. Secondly, in those same emails that they are now the Commissioner of Police and the Prime Minister go on faith and which now concluding on their request, I want to ask the Prime Minister, insofar as part of the conversations in there, pointed to an interest in removing the DPP, one way or the other, so as to have a replacement which was more acceptable to those who were communicating according to the text. Whether the Prime Minister herself or any other person of her cabinet made any approach to any relevant office holder in this country to encourage or to induce action which could have resulted in the DPP being kicked upstairs, promoted, elevated, or whatever, but resulting in his replacement in the office of DPP. I want the Prime Minister to definitively respond to that, as she's calling through a lawyer for an end of the investigation. And while I'm at it, based on what is happening in the Guardian today, as discussed on 95.5 this morning, because I follow the media as an educator in this country, I want to ask the government, all of them, that the indication in the emails to pressure the Guardian to change its approach to reporting on matters of national interest, particularly those matters that expose government's wrongdoing and abuses, whether anybody in the government had anything to do with the pressure being brought to bear on the Guardian today to change its posture in being, as it has labeled itself, the guardian of democracy. Because, we have concerns about a newspaper, like the Guardian or any other, being forced to be in the position it is in today in response to pressure from the government, which the emails pointed out holds threats of withholding of the largest of the state. So I want the government to tell us whether any of them had anything to do with any of that. And these are the three areas I would like to get specific answers from the government. Because this matter will not be allowed to die the way the government expects it to die, and the way government spokespersons are trying to make it die. And of course, the truth is in short supply here. One of the persons in the basket of email addresses of interest to us all is a certain Minister of Local Government, Suraj Rambachan. Now that the Police Commissioner has provided this headline to the Express, and he is now vindicated, he is calling for my resignation on the basis that I did say that if the emails are found to be fake, I would resign. I want to ask Mr. Rambachan and all the others today to point me to any point in time when I made any such statement or took any such position. From day one, I called for an investigation and I dismissed any quid pro quo on my part. I stood on the ground of being a member of Parliament who has the right to determine what I raise in the Parliament, and if it offends anybody, through pool. I represent the people who elected me. And if I'm concerned about mud on the floor of the Diego Martin River, then I raise that in the Parliament. And whose shoe doesn't get muddy by walking across, that is their business. So I want Dr. Rambachan to tell me, since he is now saying that I said that I would resign if it is found to be fake, let him point you, the media, to where I took that position. It's yet another instance of a member of the government having difficulty speaking the truth. And of course, hoping that the untruth serve their purpose. We have to pay careful attention to what is happening here. The response of the government to this matter on May 20th has been very curious. On the Monday when I spoke about this matter in the Parliament, they were all like a wet rag hanging off a pole. They went home that night, came back on the Tuesday morning with the advice of their experts. And the advice was, demonize Rowley for having fabricated it. And they followed that to the T. I was personally accused of fabricating these emails. It is for the country to believe that or not believe it. I ignore that. They reported me to the police as having done that. And when the police came to interview me, the interview I had with the police was along that line. They were interviewing me as a suspect who had fabricated those emails. And that's why I was asked whether I could provide a copy of the original. And that is why the Prime Minister could be asking me now to identify the source, when in fact I told the Parliament this thing came to me anonymously from a source unknown to me. So you have a point now. You could believe the Prime Minister or you could believe me. That's what it is. And now that they have managed to extract this comment from the Commissioner of Police, however it was done, I don't know, or the Commissioner of Police did not understand what his statement would do in terms of undermining the investigation. Because one has to understand now, the situation of the investigation has changed considerably. Because I can't see how the Commissioner, having definitively told the country that the emails are fake, yet there are subordinate officers who are supposed to be conducting an investigation with an open mind. What do they do now? Are they to be guided by the Commissioner's statement? Or are they to continue diligently working, hoping to find a contrary view? What is that? Is that how investigations are done in the police service? And you may recall, I was castigated for saying in the Parliament what I thought, because I'm always open with this country. I said I had difficulty with the officer who was put to spearhead it, and I gave the reasons why. I'm not being malicious or unreasonable to the officer. He knows what I'm saying. And I also said, by going to the police, as against going to the Integrity Commission, I was not convinced that the management of the police service had the will to pursue this matter in the way it ought to be pursued. I put that on the Hansard on the 20th of May. What are you saying now, people? Because to go to the source where nobody can debate whether it is correct or not, you go to the servers. All third parties have been saying that except government spokespersons and the government authorities. And to do that would have required a will, not just to go there, but to face down the government who wanted a particular result from the investigation. Look at how the government has changed its position over this matter. And now, this comment comes last Friday or whatever it was, generating a headline on Monday morning. Emails fake and the government is in jubilation time. If this is allowed to remain like this, all it would mean is that the matter was raised by me in the Parliament, the country was concerned about what it portends, and it was not investigated in a way to make the people of this country satisfied that they are not criminals in the corridors of power in this country who are conducting public business for their own advantage and to the detriment and destruction of Trinidad and Tobago. That's what this means. And I today call on all parties concerned, including persons who are in possession of information that will counter this government onslaught, to stand firm for Trinidad and Tobago. Whether you are the investigator, whether you are the interviewee, Trinidad and Tobago needs you to stand up now so that this government does not get away with this kind of manipulation of public opinion in their own interest. This is a matter that warrants a thorough investigation. And I repeat today, the powers of the Integrity Commission, as provided to them by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, where they can take evidence or information under oath during an investigation, is required in this matter. For example, the questions that I just raised there, if those questions are put by an Integrity Commission officer to any government officer or any other officer, the answers can be had under oath, which means that if it is subsequently found not to be a true statement, then the persons who gave the incorrect statements under oath immediately find themselves in jeopardy. It is that kind of investigation that the Parliament expected to take place in situations like this, where public officers come under scrutiny, where their conduct appears to have fallen short, that the investigation is rigorous. The periphery of it is so sealed that persons couldn't just do PR and jump over the fence and escape if they have done wrong. You would have seen the government and their spokespersons and their lackeys rigorous attempts to ensure that the Integrity Commission does not in any way get involved in this matter. Now that the police has summed up their effort in this way, it is absolutely essential for the Integrity Commission to start from scratch, go into this matter, interview all persons involved, and report to the people of Trinidad and Tobago as to their findings. Otherwise, this will remain an indelible stain on the people of Trinidad and Tobago for all times. This matter cannot be allowed to end, as the Prime Minister's lawyer is advocating. And it cannot be allowed to end on the Commissioner of Police's throwaway comment last weekend. It cannot be allowed to end on a newspaper headline when absolutely no information has been provided to us as to how the police came to that basis. When all of us know that until we get to the bottom of this, where the evidence could lie, if it lies there, no amount of bringing boxes of CPUs and taking them back and lawyers talking for huge sums of money without making sense. None of that is a replacement for a proper, thorough, and independent investigation. The people of Trinidad and Tobago want to know the truth of this matter, not just the truth of the email addresses. But interestingly enough, in the same conversation that we get a headline, the emails are fake, which serves the government's purpose. Because the government is saying, emails fake reminds us of a game that we used to play as children called Wrong Does. Captain out, all out. Which means emails fake, dismiss everything else. Then what do you look at? They hold on to that. But then I'm being told by the Commissioner of Police, the report about his statement, that the contents are being investigated. What is this? Here is the government waving front page around, calling for an end to the investigation, the Prime Minister declaring vindication, and others. That came from a Commissioner of Police statement. But the Commissioner of Police is saying that there's an investigation into the content. We were saying all along that the corroborative aspect of the content should be and must be the subject of investigation. The Commissioner of Police is confirming that now. But that is against the background of a declaration which is being used by the government to say end the probe because we are vindicated. Are we a people that are that confused or that stupid? So we now have to determine where we are in this. And where we are is that there's no satisfactory outcome. There's a confusion and questionable conduct coming from various offices. And if we ever needed the action of the Integrity Commission as an independent body, this situation demands it. And the Commission must act with haste to initiate an independent investigation so that the content, the addresses, the new information that probably will come out of investigations, all of that will form the package of the basis on which the Commission can then say to us that there is nothing there or that there are people with questions to answer. Just bear in mind, these conversations in those scripts are connected quite, what should I put it? They're connected quite clearly to the government's attempt to deceive the country last year, August, and going back as far as November of 2011. It's a continuation. It started in November 2011 when the government failed to appeal a matter to benefit friends of the government, and that appeal raised eyebrows in this country. We had governmental positions out of the AG's office. Later on, it went to the creation of the bill in the parliament, which became an act, which had a clause, which was proclaimed, which had certain effects in the court, and it continued all the way to my moment now speaking to you. It's a continuation. Do not lose sight of that. So, that's what we have today. Any questions?
Dr. Rawi, aren't you a bit concerned though that it may be a little too late for the Integrity Commission to get all the necessary information based on the servers and the timeline they keep this information stored?
I couldn't say that. I'm in no position to say whether it's too late for that. But what the experts have said, and the CNC3 News bore it out, that the longer you wait to try to find the unpolluted route, the more difficult it becomes. And I'm saying that's what the government is playing for. And secondly, when something happens, it's never too late to investigate a crime. Because if that's when it comes to your attention, you can't say, I won't investigate it because it's too late. You investigate it based on what is there available to you now. I don't know what you will find. However, if the investigation is thorough, unimpeded, and independent, then whatever they find would be all that's available to us as a people. And then that will give us some opportunity to determine whether in fact we should have not been concerned about this, or whether we should be concerned that people have questions to answer.
Dr. Rowley, what would be forming in some people's minds in terms of opinion, if the commissioner is saying that the email thread is fake, then how could the conversations contained in them still be looked at if the actual technical manner in which they were allegedly taken place is found to be fake by the police?
Well, I don't know on what basis he's saying that, because if you recall, the immediate defense of the government was to latch on to one or two technical things that make a couple of the addresses technically unfeasible. But the vast majority of the addresses are the addresses that are being used or were being used by the government. You would have heard the AG only speaking about annan@gmail.com, because there were, I think there was one or two emails like that. But the vast majority of the emails was annan@tstT.net.tt. That is not a fake address. The Prime Minister's address, as admitted by her, is not a fake address. And so is Rambachand's and Moonlight and others. So what exactly is fake? Because I always made it quite clear. The pages that I brought to the Parliament were not pages of printed emails. Somebody extracted these conversations and put them on those pages. So of course, you can call that a fake email, not an email. But the individual items under the various addresses, all the addresses of the officers who are involved in this investigation are real. So what is the Commissioner of Police saying? that he has determined that annan@tstv.net is a fake address? Or is he saying that he has determined that there was no communication between that address and the other addresses? But how does he do that? He hasn't told us. Because what we know, he has not gone to where you can go to get that information. And even the handsets, if they are unclean, if they have not been interfered with, they have not told us that they've had them, they've looked at them, and they've seen none of that. And even if he says that, that would not be proof. Huh? Because all persons of interest would have had days and weeks and no months to clean those things. So that is not the basis on which you can come and tell me they're fake. There are other areas you have to go. And having not gone there, I would love for the Commissioner of Police to tell the country what he has before him, which now he didn't have on the day of May 22nd, I think it was, when he got it, because he would have got something in front of him that was laid in Parliament. So we all know what that is. You all have seen it, you published it. A month and a half later he's saying, what I have before me tells me it's fake. No, I don't want to believe it's the same thing he had in front of him on May 20th. Because if that is what it is, then he is in the same position as the first government speaker who looked at it or heard about it and said it's fake. But we didn't want that from the Commissioner of Police. What we wanted was the outcome, the output of an investigation. And given what has been published now, which is being used as vindication, we don't know what that output is. We don't know how he arrived at that position because he hasn't shared it with us. And having dropped that into the ether, and the headline is there, I have now waited for 48 hours since I saw that headline to see if the Commissioner of Police will in fact make any adjustment to that which has been attributed to him. I've seen none. So he's standing by that headline. I didn't jump out and attack the Commissioner of Police or the police about that. I waited to see whether in fact what the press has put out and the interpretation and the text, whether there's any correction to come. Because this is serious. A major investigation taking place. We are waiting for an outcome. The investigation appears not to be progressing because of certain impediments. And up comes the Commissioner of Police and just puts a red pen through it and says, that's it, it's fake. And now we have to use that to go forward. And vindication is claimed by persons who, if it is shown that those conversations are theirs, have to leave office. Which is why we're asking for the interviews. The police is out there interviewing people. They interviewed me. My name is not in the email. No action of mine was threatened or heralded there. They interview me. They're interviewing other people. We want to know what they're being told by other people. Because I said in the Parliament, I am not the only person in this country who came to the conclusion that this matter ought not to be just dismissed as a frivolity. It ought to be taken seriously and investigated so that we know exactly what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not the only person. Of course, I'm demonized and they're calling for my resignation, which they will not get. Right? So the bottom line is, I want to know how this investigation is progressing. And in the middle of that, I get this definitive statement, email fake, says Commissioner of Police. He gone to London and the Prime Minister waving the paper in front of my face. And then you have Ramachan adding one more lie to the government's basket of lies. Rowley said he was going to resign. Come on, what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago? We have too many schools, too many universities to be subjected to this insult. This is an insult to our intelligence. And once again, I go back to the statement of former President Robinson. The professional class has been consistently failing this country. And this is a failure from the office of the Commissioner of Police. It's a very serious matter. Whatever he thinks, whatever the outcome of the investigation, this is no way for it to have been handled. And seeing the vulgarity of the Prime Minister and her minions waving this around as vindication, they're fooling no one. We are more impressed by their responses before in attempting to lead us astray from the answers we are seeking. And that didn't start with the emails. They've been doing us a merry dance way back last year, August, with the proclamation of Section 34.
Ms. Dr. you seem, when you brought to the Parliament, clearly you implicitly trusted the source from which whoever gave you that thread of emails. Do you still implicitly trust that source?
I don't know the source, so I can't implicitly trust the source. What I trusted was the corroborative components of the content with matters that eventually came to pass. As predicted in there and as portrayed in there. Of course, the government can come with a term to explain that it was retro engineering, something like that. The bottom line is, if they interpret that way, I don't. That is their way out of explaining what they promised to do and what actually happened.
I'm just seeking clarification. So some consider a major political gamble on your part. You could also face consequences as well
Such as?
Well, if it is, the line is, if it is fake, then you could be held accountable. If it is real, of course, those whose addresses could be held accountable. But I'm saying, given this political gamble, should you not have...
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
What I'll be held accountable for is bringing it to the Parliament for an investigation. Okay? And you, sir, Trinidad and Tobago citizen, if you see what appears to be a crime being committed and you report it to the police station, right? And they charge you for the crime, you'd feel the way I might think about now, with you being accused of being the author of the crime, because you had the temerity to report it. I was satisfied that this matter required an investigation, and I had the responsibility to use the privilege of Parliament to raise it and to have an investigation. There was no other logical way for an investigation to have been triggered. Look, even after I raised it in the Parliament, look what's happening. Even after I raised it in the Parliament, look at what is happening with the investigation. Yet there are people telling me that I should have authenticated them. Here is the government's authentication process, including the entire machinery of state. And I'm here this morning taking issue with that. But you're telling me I should have done that before I came to the Parliament. I'm not required to. What I'm required to do is to use the protection of the privilege of Parliament, and who it offends too bad for them. When the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, was coming to the Parliament with a letter with warm ink from a law office in San Fernando, telling us that 2 government ministers had taken bribes from Dansam Dansuk. Those 2 ministers lost their jobs immediately. They were charged by the police. I didn't hear any of you calling on her to resign when it turned out to be probably conspiracy to pervert the cause of justice in this country. There's a case in the courthouse right now along that line. I didn't see any of the spokespersons saying that since the person came to Parliament with information that turned out to be untrue, right? That person should leave the Parliament. No. The Parliament was used then, the privilege was used then to raise that matter, because if government ministers were taking bribes from Dansam Dansuk, we wanted to know. And there had to be consequences. Well, the yardstick has not changed. It has not changed, and it will not change. If members of government are alleged to have sold their mandate to persons who want to escape the court, we want to know. And if persons have interfered with the independent office of the DPP, we want to know. That's where we are. So tell Mr. Ramachan, stop putting words in my mouth. I am responsible for the words that I speak. And I am responsible to the people of Diego Martin West, who I represent. And as a opposition leader, I'm responsible to all the persons who expect that this office will be the watchdog of government conduct and misconduct.
Dr. The Prime Minister's attorney, Israel Khan, is saying that he believes that you have been set up. Is that something that you have thought of?
I don't know that Mr. Khan is concerned about me being set up. I don't ask him for food, I don't ask him for drink, I don't ask him for housing, I don't ask him for political support. What's his concern? Since he's so concerned about me. You know something I just say that? Have you all noticed how the UNC is very concerned about the PLM's poor leadership? The UNC is campaigning for a stronger leader in the PNM, better leadership for the PNM, and the PNM, every time they speak about the PNM, the UNC is very concerned about the PNM, quality of the PNM leadership. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Since when the UNC is so concerned that the PNM should have effective and good leadership? Then we're not concerned about the UNC's concerned about the PNM's business.
But Dr. Ring, are you concerned that you may have been set up?
What do you mean by set up? By who?
But you got documents, you say you don't know the source. How is it possible that someone could have been simply trying to put you in place?
Well, I don't share that view. Right? So I don't share that view. That is a concern of others, not my concern. My concern is to treat it as information coming to me. I get lots of things coming to me, and I don't bring them all to the fore. Right? But when I was satisfied that it required my attention, I gave it my attention. That's what it is.
The UNC certainly seems to be trying to, at least taking advantage of your statement last week that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. As Senator Hines said yesterday, that adage may only be true in the context of if they are fighting amongst each other, but not that the PNM is seeking to have any collaboration with Mr. Warner.
That I didn't take ownership of that adage. I'm sure you grew up with that since primary school. So I mean, if there is somebody who's prepared to force the Prime Minister to speak the truth about how she dealt with the cabinet colleagues, that's interesting to the PNM. And if there is somebody who's prepared to take the mask off the face of the Prime Minister, and if the Prime Minister is not prepared to tell us about the person that she defended for 3 years as her rock, that he's no evil personified, then we need to know that. PNM is not going to get in the middle of that to prevent us from knowing that. So we don't have any interpretation to put on that. That's an adage we all grew up with. Right? But when you go to say that the PNM is having an alliance with that the Prime Minister is desperately wanting, now let me tell you something. We're not being fooled there. We grew up here in Trinidad today, but we know this country. When the Prime Minister is going down to Chaguanas, denigrating young Abinash Singh in the way she did, about the PNM taking one of your children. And this is an election. Any citizen under the Constitution can run for any party. But our Prime Minister talks about telling people in Felicity, the PNM take one of your children. Isn't the Prime Minister somebody's child? Isn't she somebody's child? Why is it that the UNC could take somebody's child and sit around and mash up the country? And the PNM can't take somebody's child and Felicity to fix it? But that's coded. That's coded. And we know what the code is saying. And the PNM ought not to be allowed, according to her, to take a young, bright Hindu from Felicity to be a PNM candidate. That's what it is saying. And then when she tries to link me to Jack Warner as part of the problems that the UNC is facing, of course, that too is coded. Because I don't know on what basis a Prime Minister would have seen me for 3 years telling her that Jack Warner is not suited to be in the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. And that here is problem A, problem B, problem C, problem D. And every time you raise the problem with her, she turns a blind eye or she defends or protects him. Lo and behold, in a 6-week period, the UNC is now broken. Jack Warner split is off. And the Prime Minister of all persons is telling this country, the people of Chaguanas West, that this is an amalgamation between Rowley and Jack Warner. Now, you are insulting people's intelligence. This government will fall. And it will fall on the basis that from day one, it insulted the intelligence of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It conducted the business of this country on the basis that it could do anything to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and tell these people anything and get them to do anything that the government wants.